In today's show, a case study in Jrue Holiday, how the Blazers handled trade talks last offseason, and how it might impact those same discussions this summer. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, I want to talk about a trade that happened several months ago, 10 almost. And why that might impact the Blazers going forward. We're calling it a case study in Jrue Holiday. And there's some reporting from ESPN that indicates how Joe Cronin approached the trade talks when it comes to Jrue Holiday. And I think that it could be telling for how he might approach the trade talks when he has to or chooses to deal some veterans here in the coming months. I think it'll be worth your time, I promise. Plus, I want to close the show with a little bit of proof that the Blazers, if nothing else, aren't afraid to spend small millions. Let's get into the Jrue Holiday stuff. There is, thanks to the short conference finals rounds, 4 games in the East and 5 games in the West, we got a long time like the Super Bowl in between sporting events, in between basketball games. It's too long, in my opinion. Bring them back. I don't think the finals should be a fixed TV date, but I get it. I understand why they are, blah, 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 blah. But it's too long. It's too long. But one of the things that the long break has afforded us is a lot of writing. And Brian Windhorst, a veteran reporter for ESPN, wrote a long story today about how Jrue Holiday, who's going to be pivotal in the NBA Finals, wound up in Boston. Jrue Holiday, of course, made a pit stop for your beloved Portland Trailblazers, one of an all-time great Blazers legend, joining Mike Miller and Steve Francis as just legends in the game. I think you could probably throw Pau Gasol and Festus Ezeli in that mix, but I think they're different. They're in a different category, similar category, but a different category. This is more Stevie Franchise and Mike Miller. The story is long and goes a lot of different directions, but it focuses a fair amount on Joe Cronin trading Holiday to the Celtics because that's how he ended up on the Celtics. The Blazers, of course, traded Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. Jrue Holiday ends up a Blazer, and right away he finds out from Joe Cronin that he's going to be flipped, right? That he's going to be traded into the future. And there's a couple paragraphs I want to read you. I want to read you the first one and then the second one here. I believe this story is free. I'm going to link it in the comments. It might be an insider story. Unfortunately, in 2024, you got to pay for journalism because no one else will pay them. Here's the pay directly for journalism, a subscription fee like you used to with a newspaper. Here's the first paragraph that I think is of note from Windhorst's longer story. Again, this will be linked in the episode description for this very episode. Quote, when the call was over, there was a list of 5 or 6 teams. Portland was made aware, and the bidding commenced. Jrue Holiday talks to Joe Cronin, says, here are the 5 or 6 teams that I'm willing to go to. Don't trade me anywhere else. And Joe Cronin says, I'll make it happen. Several teams armed with draft-picked assets that would have been attractive to the Blazers called only to be told they weren't on the list. This included the Pacers and the New York Knicks, teams that later made big in-season trades and had long playoff runs. But the Blazers stuck to Holiday's list. You remember that right when it came out, Jrue Holiday was very appreciative and said very positive things about Joe Cronin. He was very upfront with him, and he was very, very thankful. And he was kind of, Holiday was pretty down on the way the Bucks handled it. He felt like he was kind of blindsided and all those things. And he was very, very complimentary of Joe Cronin in public settings. And this kind of shows you why, right? Is that Joe Cronin says, where do you want to go? Okay, here's 5, 6 teams. Cool. I'll make it happen. Other teams come in with good offers, right? Like interesting and intriguing draft pick offers. The Knicks have a bunch of picks they could potentially trade. And he says, nah, we're good. He doesn't want to go there. I got to trade him to the places he wants to go. And I think you can read this one of two ways. My read on it is that maybe those, like, we don't know the reported deals, but I don't think the Pacers trade that they made for Pascal Siakam is like wholly better than what the Blazers got for Holiday, and Holiday is a better player. And I don't think what the Knicks traded for OG Anunoby, I don't think the package RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley is particularly intriguing. I like Emmanuel Quickley a lot. I don't think RJ Barrett's very good. More draft picks could have, those aren't the only, like, the packages that went in those trades, the Siakam trade and OG trade, aren't the only trades those teams could offer, but I don't think those are overwhelming. So I could see like why Cronin wouldn't be like, call Jrue Holiday back and be like, hey, wait, hold on. What about Indiana? Have you ever been, I've got giant pork sandwiches there. You're going to love that state. What about the Big Apple? But I think there's one of two ways to read this. My read on this is that this is how Cronin has typically operated. He's been famously, kind of found out a place that CJ McCollum was comfortable going before trading him, made sure that Josh Hart was comfortable before he traded him away, and made sure that worked out for him. Even with Norman Powell, he and Robert Covington traded him to places they were happy, even though it was just like a salary dump for the Blazers, and they found a good spot for him. Kind of ironically, and this irony is absolutely not lost on me, the only person that Joe Cronin hasn't like sort of worked with is Damian Lillard. There is a certain irony to that. Obviously, that situation is unique. Dame only wanted to go to one spot, yada yada. Like, like, I don't think Cronin handled that situation particularly well, although he may have come away with a good trade. You can do a bad job, and you can do a good job poorly, and he may have done that, like the public perception poorly, but the actual execution of the trade totally good. But there is a certain amount of irony to that. The other read on this, and this was shared with me by a friend of the program, Brandon Sprague. I did a little video segment with him and his radio co-host, Andy Dirt Johnson, tonight and this evening as I'm recording it. You were listening to the Thursday, June 6th show, and Brandon shared this perspective, is that, so for me, I'm like, yeah, that's Joe Cronin's doing something that he's done often for the most part. This is a good way to build positive relationships with powerful agents in the league. The Blazers are never going to be like free agent destination, so you're not really building goodwill with like superstar players that are, we're going to want to come there, but it's like agents are going to say, this dude is good to work with, he gets my clients where they want to go. So if you're choosing between two teams and the money and the situation is relatively equal, steer your clients to Portland, etc., like that. Like, I think this is just like a good way of doing business, and and he's continued to do business that way. And you feel like you create positive relationships. These positive relationships, you think that sort of will come back down the line, not just like karmically, but like literally they will come back down the line because you'll have good working relationships with folks in the league. That's kind of my read on it. Cronin has operated this way. He's continued to do so. And Brandon Sprague offered this other take, which I had not considered, and I don't know that I agree, but I think it's worth fleshing it out, is that Cronin prioritized player happiness over the franchise. That might be harsher than Sprague put it, but I think that was the gist of it. It's like that if there were better offers and, quote, draft pick assets that would have been attractive to the Blazers, only to be told they weren't on the list. Teams weren't on the list offering those draft pick assets. Like if the Blazers did indeed turn down better deals because they wanted to do right by Jrue Holiday, that is a little weird. That's weird. I do think there is part of, and my friend of the program, Katie Heindel, has kind of helped me see this, is like a lot of the way we talk about trades, very ruthless. It's very just like, it's not very people centric, and like people are the central figures being traded, and remembering that they're humans and all of these things, and like prioritizing their happiness is just like a human way of treating folks. But I think the sort of, probably the flip side is that the best way to run a basketball team in terms of like, is just like ruthless, disgusting efficiency, is the like all players are assets, maximize your assets, Sam Presti approach. I think the OKC currently has a very, very positive vibes in their with their team, so maybe he's prioritized vibes in a way that we from the outside didn't know, but it's sort of the cold-hearted, all players, everything you trade is an asset, whether it's a human or a future human in a draft pick. I do think that's probably generally just like the right way to do business. I think that ruthlessness that is a little bit gross is the right way to go. And I think Sprague helped me see that, like, yeah, maybe passing up on quality deals. And again, like, I'm not sure the Pacers and the Knicks in specific situations were quality deals, but it's worth considering both sides. I think this is, Yeah, okay, I'll just say it. I think this is not something that I would have parsed as deeply if it wasn't June and the basketball team that this podcast is about was a little bit better, but it's June and the basketball team's bad, so we're kind of digging a little bit deeper than we normally would. So I think there's that. It's like, did Joe Cronin prioritize, future relationships with player and player agents, or did he, and by doing so, did he kind of not maximize the value in return? But in continued reporting from Windhorst, Cronin was very specific about what he wanted. In fact, there were two teams that came forward as the leading suitors for Jrue Holiday. It was the LA Clippers and as well as the Boston Celtics. And the Clippers, they were going to give expiring contracts, which did not get expiring contracts. That would have helped clean up the Blazers' books. But Portland pushed for more. Quote, looking for draft pick swaps and having those selections be unprotected. And I'm going to read a little bit more. Apologies, Brian. The Clippers' proposal drew out the type of strong offer from the Celtics that Portland was hoping for. The Celtics, heavily committed to going all in, came with a bid the Clippers couldn't match. The Celtics offered 2 first-round picks, their own in 2029 and the 2024 Golden State Warriors selection that ended up becoming a lottery pick. Boston agreed to make the 2029 pick unprotected. It included defensive specialist big man Robert Williams. Those were the Blazers' push for the two final acquisitions, was making sure the 2029 pick was fully unprotected, which could be valuable. I think the Celtics are likely to be pretty good as long as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are around, and they may probably be around in 5 years, but 5 years is an eternity, and I think an unprotected pick into the deep future has some real value. And the team's obviously really expensive, and some of the role players on the older side. So I think that's a worthy flyer. And Rob Williams, who, like, if he's healthy, is really good, wasn't healthy, had knee surgery, played 6 games, didn't work out. I think this is telling, is like that Cronin wanted to do right by Jrue, but also in the end, he wanted to do right by the team. He wanted the specific things, unprotected picks. The Warriors pick, it's a little bit weird because the Warriors pick was very specifically protected. It's top 4 protected this year and top 1 protected in the following year. So maybe lightly protected picks and then specifically an unprotected future pick. Specifically the Clippers in this instance, they didn't have near-term picks to trade. They were going to be trading future picks, and I could see why the Clippers would want to put some protections on those deep future picks because they might suck. They're old. I think in the end, Cronin got what he wanted. Now, he may have artificially narrowed his negotiating partners, but he got what he wanted. And to me, this suggests that Joe Cronin has a specific approach. And instead of relitigating the Damian Lillard Jrue Holiday trade, I don't care to, and I probably just straight up will never do that on this podcast. Maybe I will. I should not say that. There's a long summer ahead. I might do that for a week. Who knows? But I want to spin it forward. What does this way that Joe Cronin specifically approached this trade tell us about how he might approach trades for other veterans this summer? Malcolm Brogdon, Jerami Grant, Robert Williams, Anfernee Simons. What might those look like? Let's talk about that to close the show. In the second segment, join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. It's the #1 spot for getting last-minute tickets. Are you in the Boston area or thinking about making a trip there? What about if you're going to be in beautiful North Texas and head to Dallas? Well, if you're in the area and you're thinking about getting last-minute NBA Finals tickets faster and easier, the Game Time app is the spot for you because tickets on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. You can walk away with killer last minute deals because that's what they do. You can save up to 60% off on last minute tickets for not just sports, not just the NBA Finals, but concerts and comedy and theater shows. Whatever you might be looking for, you're going to find it on the Game Time app. So go check it out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. It'll help you take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time or whatever tickets you want to buy. Again, terms apply. Create an account. Use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right. So, short of relitigating the Jrue Holiday trade, which I litigated a little bit, I think it's fine. We'll see what happens. A lot of it is what happens on the back end, right? Like what do they do with the 14th pick? Although I think the transitive property is not maybe fair. It was a good was a worthy trade to get the 14th pick. It might end up being a dud selection. I don't think you get to connect those dots. Although you can do whatever you want. But what they do with Malcolm Brogdon and Rob Williams will really kind of help you see the quote total haul for the end of the Damian Lillard trade. And I do think that is a fair use of the transitive property of trades. That's, to me, those are like very specifically connected. The Blazers didn't prioritize expiring contracts like the Clippers may have offered. They prioritized tradable parts in Malcolm Brogdon and Rob Williams, and they also have some other veterans on their own that were already on the team, and Anfernee Simons and Jerami Grant, and all of those gentlemen could potentially be traded. I do think they will trade Malcolm Brogdon. I think he's a lock. He's heading into the final year of his contract. They probably should have traded him at the deadline. Maybe he was hurt and the market was depressed, but they got to move him now. It doesn't make any sense to hold on to him any longer. His value is only going to go down once the season starts because the clock's ticking. You get less. You're trading for less Malcolm Brogdon as you negotiate into the season. But I think it's worth considering how, knowing what we know about Joe Cronin, that he has mostly negotiated with his guys. He said, "Hey, Josh Hart, we know you're not going to resign here. You don't want to be here. You certainly don't want to be here as a forced to play small forward or you don't get the ball in your hands to do the point guard stuff you like to do. You don't get to play small ball freaky deaky power forward. You just have to play other guard in a ball dominant situation where you're a spaced out shooter and just it's not a good fit for you, and maybe you don't like the city. We know you're not going to resign. Where do you want to go? Find a place for him to go. CJ McCollum, hey, we're tearing this bad boy down. Where do you want to go? Would New Orleans be okay? Okay, great. We're going to find a deal. We're going to find a deal that works. We know how he operates. So I'm thinking about that moving forward, without getting too deep into the specifics of a trade. I have some trade ideas that I wonder, if you're Joe Cronin, how do you approach said veterans on the team with that opportunity? I think one of the deals that was spun up for Robert Williams during the year, or popped up as a rumor, is that the Rockets were interested in trading for Rob Williams. It's hey Rob, do you want to go play for Ime Udoka again? He probably would be cool with that from what I understand. So that might be a useful spot for him. But otherwise, it's where does Rob Williams want to go? I don't know him well enough to guess that. I don't even know sort of what his physical health basketball playing status is to have a guess either. But one trade that I have talked about a bunch is trading Anfernee Simons to Orlando at the Magic in something that would be akin to centered around getting a future draft pick and Anthony Black. Those are the two names that I would want if I'm trading with the Magic. But who knows what they would be willing to say yes to. Anthony Black's a recent top 6 pick in the NBA draft. You never know if those guys are deeply invested in them. But to me, the sell from Joe Cronin is, do you want to go home? Not everybody wants to go home. Some guys do not want to move back home. There are reasons that folks leave home in the first place. But for Anfernee Simons, the sell could be, I would love to be back in Florida. I would love to be back in my hometown or in my home region, depending on where he lives. But that could be a sell for Cronin. That's a job where a trade where he could be hey, does this interest you? When thinking about teams that might be interested in Jerami Grant, I think the California teams, Golden State, if they were to work some multi-team trades where either Andrew Wiggins or Chris Paul were to leave, then I think the Blazers, obviously those players specifically wouldn't be valuable back on the Blazers, but a multi-team swap, a 3 to 4 team swap where Jerami Grant is routed to Golden State, I could see that being a sell. Hey, do you want to go play on a really good team? And you kind of fit in some ways what they want to do, although you're not much of a passer, but they're a bad rebounding team that could use shooters, and you're a bad rebounder who can shoot. You would help. I think that's a sell. But sort of the same flip of that coin, it's and maybe living in the Bay in general has some appeal to Jerami Grant. But Sacramento, I think Sacramento could be a team that would be interested in Jerami Grant. Say they strike out on the Brandon Ingrams and they strike out on the Kyle Kuzmas, and they just really feel like they need an upgrade or at least a change from Harrison Barnes because running it back is not appealing, and they strike some multi-team deal in which the Blazers end up sending Jerami Grant to Sacramento, and Harrison Barnes gets rerouted somewhere, and the Blazers get draft picks for the troubles. Sacramento might be a harder sell to Jerami Grant, and I think that's where this type of thing could come in. It's does Joe Cronin say, sorry, no matter what, at this stage, I've changed what I instead of limiting the parameters of my trade partners to help that would be appealing to the players on my roster and their representation? Do I maximize their absolute value? And to sort of more prove my point, a team that I think would be really appealing, should have some interest in Malcolm Brogdon is Oklahoma City. I think they lost in the playoffs in part because they're just not big enough. They got size was a problem against Dallas, and if they played the other teams in the other side of the bracket, size would have been a problem against Denver, size would have been a problem against Minnesota. Like whoever they played in the Final Four of the West, they would have been too small. But I think another reason they just straight up lost to the Mavericks is because they didn't have enough dudes who could dribble in and take a pull-up jump shot. A lot of their spacers, like Isaiah Joe and Lou Dort, they don't have that sort of mid-range game. Like even if that's the best shooting team in the league, like it's not like they're light on shooters. What they're light on is like those guys who can shoot, but also like make a play off the bounce that aren't just Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and J-Dub. Like they could use one more guy who could go get a bucket, go get a shot. I think Malcolm Brogdon is that. However, is Malcolm Brogdon interested in going to live in Oklahoma City? And I think that's the kind of thing where this comes up. It's like, is Malcolm Brogdon's list, hey, I want to go to these places, I want to play for these teams, I want to play for this level of team, I want to, or does he say like, hey, Oklahoma City has not traditionally been a place that many players want to go outside of, I guess, Paul George, although I think that kind of was sprung on him more than him specifically asking to get there. But once he was there, I think he was pretty happy. But like, this has not been a traditional landing spot for players. They've done a good job acquiring and churning out and really high level trades. And so maybe you like, this is sort of that thing. It's like, is OKC the line, or are they good enough that the line has changed? Is OKC the line where it's like, nah, that's not on my list. Sorry. Like that's not a place I want to be. And does Joe Cronin honor that? Or does Cronin go more of the Damian Lillard approach where he says, hey, you can give me your list, but if I hate the offers, I'm just straight up not going to approach that. I'm not going to negotiate it. I'm going to send you a place that is okay. Like sending Damian Lillard to Milwaukee is a really nice landing spot. It's a pretty darn good consolation to end up in Milwaukee. Maybe not like city-wise versus South Florida. The weather's a little bit different, but it's on the water. It starts with an M. But like in terms of competitive basketball environments, I don't know if it's a perfect fit for Dame in terms of his skill set. Miami really would have fit what he wants to do for a variety of reasons. Am I relitigating the Dame trade even on this very podcast? But like, would Cronin change his approach? I think we have a lot of data to suggest that Cronin will work with players within reason. Would this summer he limit his? I think the thought experiment here is, what does within reason mean? Like the case study in Jrue Holiday suggests that Joe Cronin he'll work within reason, but then he'll maximize his return within that reason. Okay. These are the 5 teams I'm able to negotiate with. These are the 2 best offers from those 5 teams. Here's the offer here's the things are must-haves. I absolutely have to have these things. Unprotected future pick and a tradable good young player in Rob Williams, obviously at risk. But like, is that the approach where you sort of narrow your negotiation parameters and then make demands? Or do you kind of widen your net? Because at this point, what the Blazers need to do is absolutely maximize their return. I think the best version of this is the latter, right? Is that you absolutely maximize your return and you just like trade someone to hell, right? You're like, guess what, Jeremy? You're going back to Detroit because they're willing to give us, Detroit wouldn't do this, but like they're willing to give us multiple first round picks, right? Apologies for calling Detroit hell. The city, totally nice. The basketball organization, in shambles. But like, I think we have a good sense of how Joe Cronin does business with players for the most part. And I think will be telling when this summer he will trade some veterans, how he continues to do business. Because if it is relatively narrow parameters, I think there is a point when you get diminishing returns where you are too nice to players and their representation and you are not maximizing what you can get in your return. But there is a point where doing right by folks and maximizing your return is actually whatever the opposite of burning the candle at both ends is. Growing the candle at both ends, adding wax to both ends of your candle, where it both endears you to agents, player representation, and also helps the franchise as well. Yeah, that was 25 minutes on 2 to 3 paragraphs from Brian Windhorst. It's It's early June, okay? It's early June. I actually do think it's telling. I do think it's an interesting case study and some interesting reporting. I'm teasing myself because that's what I do here. I'm a little bit minor self-deprecation. Okay, to close the show, Blazers ownership spent some money, and not in the way that you might have guessed. Let's talk about it. Join me in that third segment, won't you? First, though, let's talk about Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks is the #1 fantasy sports app. It's over 3 million members. They're now up to 5 million members. It's the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports all summer long. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, like with their Taco Tuesday special, which increases your chance of getting win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So go get in on the action. This week on Prize Picks, you're going to get all of your NBA Finals actions, like Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points, or how about a little Jason Tatum for more than 10 rebounds as we get into the NBA Finals. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is Locked On NBA for first deposit match, dollar for dollar, up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Blazers ownership spent some money in a way that you might not expect. I am not going to sit here and tell you that I think the Blazers have a great ownership situation and that you shouldn't be worried about it. I think in general, they've got an ownership situation that is in like perpetual flux. Like, I don't think they're going to sell anytime soon. I think they're going to sell once the television rights deal is negotiated. I think what's going to happen is the deal with, it sounds like it's going to be like Amazon, NBC, and some other partners. And once that deal is finalized and the money is there and everybody knows how much money the NBA is going to get from that deal and that ink is dry, I think the Blazers will move to sell. But I don't think there's really much reason to do that. I don't think they would hold out for expansion, because I think expansion could be a ways away in the NBA. But I do think the media rights deal will be the thing that kind of pushes ownership over the edge. So until then, they're like the over the edge in terms of like agreeing to sell. But like, I also think the Allen estate and the folks that are running the Allen estate, Burt Cole specifically, they like owning a basketball team. They like running a basketball team, like being the owners of a basketball team. I don't think, and there's no like mechanism for a forced sale or anything like that. It's like they're going to own the team. I'm not here to sell you on the team, the ownership situation being like rosy and good and like don't whine about it. I do think it's overblown. Like, I think it's a classic sports fan thing where it's like a team is bad, and you'll see this like not just with Blazers, but like literally every team. A team is bad, and they're like, "Sell the team, we have no hope." And like, sure, ownership is a huge competitive advantage in the league, but also like sometimes you get Matt Ishbia, who's like an incredibly committed owner, who like just did what new owners sometimes do and spend a whole bunch of money badly. You like make a roster that doesn't make sense and cash in all your assets and like be aggressive and do all those things, and maybe they'll get out of it because money can buy your way out as well. But like, not always. You don't get more Magic draft picks. But I do think the Blazers spent a little bit of money this week, or actually a few months ago, and we're just learning about it this week. According to a report from the Oregonian, the Blazers on February 5th bought a plot of land adjacent to their practice facility in Tualatin. Their practice facility is out in the suburbs. It's actually, for visiting reporters, what a nightmare. They have to drive like deep into our suburbs to go interview the team. For those of us who have covered the team regularly, it's just normal. You drive to Tualatin, it's fine. But they bought the adjacent property. It's like a Mercedes-Benz mechanic shop. I've parked in front of it like a cajillion times going to practices in my time. But they bought that land for $4.6 million back in February. This is reporting from Andrew Miller of the Oregonian, Oregon Live. The Trailblazers confirmed in a statement, and I'm reading verbatim from the Oregonian's article, the Trailblazers organization confirmed in a statement that it bought the property, saying it was, quote, a great opportunity to secure more land near our current facilities for future flexibility. The Blazers representatives did not immediately respond to questions on potential future uses of the property. So the obvious thing is like, now that the G League team also practices out there, the Rip City Remix, they just need more space. The other thing is like, you're always going to need more room. Like, you're never going to need less stuff in like the modern NBA world for at the practice facility. Facility's nice. It's not like brand spanking new, but it's nice. It's I've been in worse ones in the NBA. I think this is there are two reads on it. One, like the obvious, just expansion for the Blazers facilities, expansion for the Remix facilities. In the Oregonian article, they mentioned potential expansion for the WNBA. It doesn't make any sense. The Blazers aren't going to be involved in the ownership group of the WNBA. So if there is a WNBA team that moves here, and I hope there is, that'd be really fun. That they're probably not going to be practicing in the Blazers facility, and they're certainly not going to have a built to suit product by the Blazers for them to practice in. That just doesn't make any sense. There's a couple things. One is they're obviously expanding. Two, that area is pretty built out. Like you got Club Sport right there, and a couple other things that are right there in the train tracks. And it's like the Blazers just like it's $4.5 million. It's like totally meaningless to a giant billionaire estate. And it's just like, let's buy it. You know, I work in real estate in my day job. It's like maybe they got wind that they were going to sell that piece of dirt, and they were like piece of dirt that's like operating a mechanic shop, a Mercedes-Benz mechanic shop, but like maybe they knew the auto shop was for sale or it's maybe going to be for sale, and they just moved to say, hey, let's just buy it because we don't want anything next to us. And what is $4.5 million to us? So it's either just like an obvious protect what you have type of land play purchase, or they're going to expand the facilities. It's not anymore to lean into it. But I think this is important. This is what I want to say. Blazers ownership has spent plenty of money. The things that they have not done is make decisive decisions about hiring and firing within the basketball portion of like wing of things. They haven't quickly moved off and bought out Chauncey Billups. When they hired Joe Cronin, they didn't run like an extensive search for a new GM. They promoted from within without any interviews, right? Like they've kind of just they have operated in a certain way, and they have not been decisive in choosing a direction. I think it's unclear, like ownership's sort of role in the Damian Lillard saga, and Dame was profusely thankful of Jody Allen in one of his goodbye notes. But like, were they kind of leaning one way and the organization another, and like the decision makers another in terms of the few like rebuild versus revamp around Dame type of thing? Like, who knows? And I think that's more the like issue with ownership, is that it's unclear what their sort of like clear, laid out, obvious vision, doing things with decisive action to make the team better. But in terms of spending money, they've spent money. They launched a G League team in 10 months. They gave Jerami Grant $160 million. They've held on to player contracts and allowed the team to prioritize having players under contract as opposed to doing things like trading with the Clippers to clean their books and just be cheaper for the sake of being cheaper. Like they haven't done that stuff. And this is like another thing. It's like $4 million may be nothing to them, and maybe they need the expansion, but maybe they just want to make sure that they have their privacy and have their space and that no one encroaches on them. And what does it matter? Like the team isn't failing or whatever because of like deeply cheap ownership. The money has been there. Maybe the other vision hasn't been there, but the money has been there. And this is just the latest example of it. Okay, this was a silly show. Tomorrow, let's get back to regularly scheduled programming. How about a heavy, deep dive into the draft? Also, if you're deep into the show, I'll tell you right now, I have heard the next two Blazers prospects that are going to work out for them Thursday and Friday are going to be better players. Two different people have told me that the workouts are about to get better. So be on the lookout for that Thursday and Friday. And Friday's show, a deep dive with friend of the program, Keandre Ashley from Hoop Intellect. It's going to be really good. We're going to talk all things draft. Nobody does it as well as Hoop Intellect on YouTube. It's probably my favorite draft scouting service that there is, or like YouTube breakdowns that there is. Keandre rocks. He's been a guest on the show before, and I'm really excited to have him back. So come back for that show. Come back for tomorrow's show. Tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to you soon.